Peace and Love, Blog Talk Radio, area.
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3,
277 9143. 845
Blog Talk Radio.
277 9143. 845 277 9143. Greetings and salutations, one and all. Come on in, come on in. It is another legendary episode of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. I have some food for you. Oh, not that edible food that you eat. Oh, no. This is that power lunch. Come on in for the power lunch, Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. All is truly and indeed a blessing. Come one, come all. Turn on your webcams, plug in your mics. I'm also available by phone at area code 845-277-9143. 845-277-9143. All is a blessing. All is a blessing. Welcome, welcome. Come on in. It's another edition, another powerful rendition of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. All is a blessing. Greetings, Facebook. Welcome, welcome, Twitter, Periscope. Welcome, YouTube. Come on in. You can always visit the show and archive by way of youtube.com/Voodoo Time. VOODOOTYE. Come on in. And you can visit me at blogtalkradio.com, blogtalkradio.com/divine-Prince, blogtalkradio.com, divine-Prince. Come on in, welcome, welcome, come on in, all is a blessing. Greetings. 845-277-9143, 845-277-9143. Let me correct that while it's in my face. Okay. 845-277-9143. 845-277-9143. You can also follow the URL, turn on your webcam URL, and join me live here as a co-host for another self-created sacred space. Greetings, Chef Bougie. Greetings, beloved, to you and yours. Come on in. Peace and love, joy and prosperity to your beautiful wife and family. Blessings, Shamafia Rothschild. Blessings, beloved. Blessings and thunder hugs from the source to the source, for indeed we are the source. Come on in. All is a blessing. Alapia, Alapia, Alapia. Come on in. Mama Bougie is Iya Orisha. Iba Orisha, Mojuba Orisha. That's Mama Bougie. All is a blessing. Come on in. Greetings. Don't forget to give me your check on audio, your check on
Come back home to Africa. Come back home.
Any technical glitches, let me know, let me know. There's going to be a brief moment of hesitation. Greetings and salutations, one and all. Greetings, greetings. And if you were not here moments ago, I remind you to just breathe. Remember to breathe and breathe again, for indeed the breath of life is indeed what fuels our body, but also is our connection. One of our connections to spirit, to the divine, is to just pause, hold still, and breathe. Eshuele guana kosi weri. Awa uno uto ni iwo. Ada afanbo osi. Obatalami itani ebo o nilu yabane shu. Eshu is the respected elder who flogs, confronts, uncovers fools. That one versed in mysteries uses truth to own you. He calls the scattered to feed poverty. Obatala shakes rascals to have sacrifice. The owner of warnings is the one who is Eshu. Aboru Aboye Aboshishe Ashe. May our Ebo reach a rune. May our Ebo be accepted. May our Ebo indeed allow what we desire to come to pass. And so we say Ashe, Asheo, and Ashe. You are indeed now sitting live once again with the Divine Prince. Divine, all blessed greetings and salutations. I am the Pan African Spiritualist, practitioner, author, and advisor. Elagun, Oloye, Hoodoo, Obeah, Bokur. Sharing with you in all things spiritual, mystical, metaphysical, cosmic, evolutionary, revolutionary, healing, and holistic from a Pan African Hoodoo world spiritualist perspective. Understanding that all is truly and indeed a blessing. If you can just see beyond the veils, for it is all just an illusion and a test, and one of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. This is indeed my constant prayer, my mantra, affirmation, reverberation, my reiteration, and it is indeed my ever living reality. All is a blessing, is crucial to the very foundation of my inner standing, my inner being, my walk, my work, my demonstration along this divine, all blessed life path and journey. And it is indeed how I, the Divine Prince, make sense out of all that we are challenged with here in our daily existence on Mother, Father Earth. And my personal place of power and understanding, that place from where I began and where I realized and crystallized all my endeavors, understanding that I and I alone create and co-create my divine destiny, and I alone create and co-create my divine, all blessed reality. And so it is. Ashe. I am so honored and blessed to be with you in this sacred space this Wednesday, November 10th, 2021. I am because my creators are. Indeed, I am because I stand on the shoulders of mighty ancestors. Indeed, I am because I understand my place and my position within the I am. And so I am because my creators are powerful, open, and receptive to all that operates for my good here and now in this most present moment in time space. And we create spiritual space, creative space, magical space each and every time we come together like this in this virtual reality. One day soon, we're going to talk about the mega verse reality. But I digress. I'm also thrilled, exceptionally thrilled, because the beloved Denise Augustine is also with us today. Master historian, master teacher, educator, the tour guide, griot, indeed the manifestation of what New Orleans and Treme indeed is and are and will continue to be as we fight forward for cultural legacy. We were in Congo Square in front of the Municipal Auditorium earlier today, this morning at 10 a.m. for a press conference in response to Mayor Cantrell's spokesperson suggesting that moving City Hall to Congress Square was dead in the water. But we want to hear from Mayor Cantrell directly. We want to hear her say those words. We would like all the legal documentation pulled. We would like all the proposals and offers for contractors to get involved in the redevelopment of City Hall to be pulled as it relates to Congress Square. And we need black and white documentation of this detour as it relates to our sacred space. So we continue to fight. And indeed, we have an army. We've amassed a legion of assistance from within the spirit realm, but also here on the ground. So we are ready to create the cultural legacy footprint in Armstrong Park at Municipal Auditorium as we would have it to show up. I'm wearing just a little bit of makeup today, and I'm a little dehydrated, so I'm going to be, it's just a paper towel. Don't panic. Greetings all that I have not already acknowledged. Come on in, Nina Lloyd. Come on in, Lateria Daniel. Greetings and blessings to you as well. Come on in, Angel. We certainly are appreciative of you being a regular participant. Greetings to beloved Orisha, Eva Orisha, Mojuba Orisha. For whoever made that earlier comment, Shamafia, Iya Orisha, that's Mrs. Bougie. that's who Mrs. Bougie is, Iya Orisha. Come on in, beloved. We certainly are appreciative of you, thankful for you, grateful for your continued support, participation, commitment, if you will, to not just me and in my house, but indeed to Voodoo and establishing and reestablishing ATR traditions as a way of life, as a foundational way of life in not just our lives. And we've got to continue to bring this out of the closet. We've made great strides in the last 20 years, in the last 15 years, in the last 5 years. But we need to continue to bring this out of the closet and ensure that our traditions are not only honored, but respected. And that's one of the things that give me such joy about Denise Augustine and her demonstration, is how we continue to not only share our sacred stories, but live our sacred stories as cultural representatives, as cultural bearers, as teachers and mentors and elders, the both of us and many more. So I'm always grateful to have her with us. She stays pretty busy. She's always with us in spirit, but sometimes I got to get her in the flesh to come on in and give us, updates about what's happening with our sacred stories. I'm sure we want to talk about the Catholic cemeteries. I promised my audience that at some point we would also share and discuss in greater detail what's evolving, for lack of better words, around the Catholic cemeteries and our access to the Catholic cemeteries, and particularly Marie Laveau, who many of you love and adore and honor and show great worship for. And people like me, I would not be in New Orleans if it were not for Marie Laveau. Marie Laveau asked me to stay here. Marie Laveau demanded that I build ministry here. Marie Laveau gave the hands up to where I am today, in many respects of my life. So I'm sure we're going to talk about, our beloved cemeteries, and particularly the Catholic cemeteries, and some discussion of Marie Laveau while we have our beloved Iya and Elder and mentor Denise Augustine with us. We invite your participation by way of phone, area code 845-277-9143. You can also join us by way of chat at both theblogtalkradio.com /the-divine-prince. But you can also join us by using the StreamYard link and plug in your webcam and mic, and also join us as a co-host on today's powerful episode of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. We are indeed going to acknowledge that it's a green day. It's a green and purple day for those who understand the code. So we are indeed going to acknowledge the powers that give us voice, that speak to us by way of the craft of divination from the spirit realms. We are indeed going to acknowledge Eshu and Legwa and Elegba and Ananasti and the other so-called trickster spirits that open and close doors for us. We are indeed acknowledging Oshun and Ajay for our luck and our blessings and our well-being and our wealth and our happiness and our joy. And of course, Yema Ya, Mama Yema Ya, and Mami Wata for cleansing us and bathing us and renewing us as new creatures, even in the midst of the hellish realities that we often exist in here on planet Mother Father Earth. Of course, Olokun, who captures and holds the truth behind the mysteries, and our Egbe, our spirit families, our soulmate clans, if you will, that come to help us to continue to grow and evolve and to become God and Goddess. For indeed, we are born God. We are born Goddess, just like we're born human. We grow from infancy to adolescence to young adulthood to maturity. But indeed, we are born human, so we are born God. We are on our journey to becoming God, multidimensionally, interdimensionally, simultaneously. And so I am grateful for Denise being with us for a little while. She might be with us for an hour or so, maybe. And we're going to bring her in so we can handle our sacredstories.com, our sacredstories.com business, and give you an opportunity to ask your questions and make your comments and offer your request. Come on. How you doing?
Doing well. The weather's beautiful. Our Sacred Stories is still active. As for the cemetery news, so as we all know, the Catholic Church, the Archdiocese of New Orleans, who owns the oldest cemeteries in the city, has closed them as of March of 2020. And there were several of us, over 60 companies, that had contracted with them to go in the cemeteries, bring our clients in to talk about Marie Laveau and Plessy, and to just give the story of the African connection in the most Africanized city in America. Being that we were one of the largest slave ports in America, and sugar was the crop that was so addictive to the Europeans, many of the enslaved population here was brought to grow sugar. And this increased after 1795 when they learned to commercially treat sugar, granulated. And so we had a large population now of enslaved people, but we also had a large population of free people of color. So our culture and tradition lives on. Now, as for this cemetery, the Archdiocese of New Orleans decided to void all of our contracts and give the contract for the operation of this cemetery to one family by the name of the Valentinos, and to keep everybody else out. Now, the story is, and I have no proof of this, but this is the word on the street, is that they have forbidden any conversation about voodoo once they go to the Marie Laveau tomb. Now, we know that 150,000 people come to New Orleans every year just to go to her tomb. So now it is my understanding that they're forbidding the word voodoo or any African-based spirituality or religion at her tomb. I've also been told that Homer Plessy's tomb will not be mentioned. So what this feels like to me is that they're completely trying to take our story away from us, or to make null and void the African story of New Orleans. So we're all locked out at this time. But I promise you, as long as I draw breath and stand on 2 feet or be rolled around in a wheelchair, I am going to tell the story of how we built this city, this culture, these traditions, how prevalent it is that everything you touch about New Orleans has an African flavor. We're somewhere in that story. Everything from the growing of rice to the making of gumbo, to the jazz, to the second line. We're not finished creating. Didn't Big Frida come along and teach y'all how to bounce and twerk and bounce and well, honey, this is a living culture. We're living inside of a culture that is constantly in motion. We are still building things upon this culture to give to the world. So I have a wonderful announcement to make. As you know, I've known DivinePrince for many years. And DivinePrince is dedicated to this story of New Orleans as I am. And years ago, he suggested that we do a tour plus experience. So I have contracted with him on this new venture, tour plus experience. I will do the first half, the tour, and then after 2.5 hours of me giving you the structure, the foundation, the understanding of this culture, traditions, and history, and how voodoo got started, and how it exists inside of the Catholic Church, and how it exists inside the Baptist Church, and why the spiritual church got started here, where they hid their voodoo, or some of their voodoo. They're still hiding their voodoo, and we'll talk about that. And after 2.5 hours of talking about the music of New Orleans, Mardi Gras, Black masking traditions, it's going to take me 2.5 hours to talk about the first neighborhood set aside. So I will then hand you off to the DivinePrince to do the second half of this tour. So I am happy to announce that we will be starting this venture. It is up to him to do the bookings, and I will give him the times I'm available. Once again, I'll be in France from the 28th to the 5th, because every time I do our African, you see, Paris and France is also connected to our African traditions in that, thank God the French got here first. This is the first successful, Haiti was the first successful slave revolt, and it was under the French. The brutality of slavery, no matter who, you cannot be a slave holder or drive the slave economy without committing trauma, murder, violence. Slavery is rooted in violence. And we will talk about the slave revolt, how it increased the Black population to New Orleans after this revolt, during this revolt, and how it increased voodoo. West Africa, Senegal was once a French colony. They speak fluent French in Senegal, And so when you take a DNA test here and your family has been here for 7 generations like mine, of course, Senegal is more than likely to show up. 41% Senegalese. That's what came out of my DNA, 41%. And I knew that already because I grew up with them voodoo practitioner split. Listen now, we're going to talk voodoo and then we're going to talk hoodoo. And so people ask me, oh, Janice, oh, Miss Janice, what's the difference? Well, voodoo is a religion. Hoodoo is what I do. Hoodoo is where we get active. Hoodoo is based in tradition and folk medicine. And because after all, voodoo is a healing religion. We seek to heal something, bind something, stop something, start something. So it is the activity that we do, but we'll talk about that. And so I am thrilled with our new business venture together. You will meet me first under our sacred tree, and then after 2.5 hours of me implanting you with who you are, I need to download who you are. We're not only going to talk about slavery, but we're going to talk about our successes, how we took over this city, how we successfully navigated inside of slavery to become free, to become wealthy. I tell people all the time, when I meet a Black woman in New Orleans and I'll say, honey, what do you do for a living? Because immediately when I meet young Black women, I turn into their mother or the woman that they need or the woman that they never had, or I'm looking to fill a void. Because sometimes mama can't do everything, and sometimes you can't have that conversation that you have with her. We can't have that conversation with her that you can have for me, because I'm not going to judge you. I don't know your story till you tell it to me. But I'll go, baby, tell me what you do for a living. And they'll go, oh, Miss Denise, I work at the hospital. And then I get this look on my face and I'll say, all right, tell me what else you do. Because I know these West Africans have a job, a half, and a hustle. Black women have a job, a half, and hustle. Oh, Miss Denise, don't cook on Friday, because we get paid on Friday. Oh, don't cook on Friday. I fry fish. I'm making potato salad. We're gonna have this, and I'm gonna slice you a piece of pound cake. How much, baby? Miss Denise, give me $12. And I'll look at them and say, go to 15. Go to 15. Get your money. They're going to spend it with somebody. When they go to them other people and them other people ask them for 15 a plate, they don't get dessert. So a job, a half, and a hustle is what we do. And we'll talk about all of that. I have 2.5 hours with you, baby. And so then DivinePrince will do the ritual part. So I'm happy to say that we are open and available. He will do I'm losing my light. He will do the bookings. I will do the stories. And we look forward to seeing you when you visit the most Africanized city in America.
And of course, not only will I do the bookings, but I will do the voodoo as a part of your experience with our sacred stories. For indeed, voodoo is infused, in my opinion, is infused in everything New Orleans. I also like to say that almost everything American has some root, some beginnings in Louisiana. And so we will often share that also as a part of the experience. And sometimes, the experience is organic, depending on who does the booking, what group is coming, what your particular interest might be. Denise can talk your ear off about just food. and its cultural, historic value.
I'm making shrimp clemenceau for dinner tonight, by the way. Shrimp clemenceau, look it up. It's a old French Creole recipe.
Yes, indeed. So I'm certainly grateful for that. The idea that, Marie Laveau would be erased or hidden from the story is not new. I remember that being a part of the discussion, if you remember, back the year of Hurricane Katrina, when Big Chief Tootie Montana died in the middle of that city council meeting. it was a discussion then about eliminating St. Joe's night, voodoo activities in the parks and in the cemeteries. And it was one of the precursors, in my opinion, spiritually speaking, for why Hurricane Katrina was just so ferocious and did this sort of disrupting damage that it did. And we've been struggling with the rebuild still from Hurricane Katrina. And then we've had to battle new storms, Hurricane Ida, and of course the political storms that come and go, that act to keep us distracted often from, the goal and protecting, the goal. So the idea of them sort of playing around with that story is not new.
Let me tell you, I want to interject something if you don't mind. It is a constant battle to keep from being wiped out of history in New Orleans. It is a constant battle. And every time they try, people like me, now y'all know I should be sitting home, but every time they try to wipe this story out, I get regenerated, invigorated. I will work. I tell my granddaughter, baby, I know you're capable of taking care of me, but I'm going to drop dead on a tour telling our story. Not only am I going to tell it, I'm going to train people to tell it. I will not let the story of my ancestors who came here broken and confused and half dead after that horrific boat ride, chained to another person laying in filth. If my ancestor can survive all of that, worse food, beatings, disregard for their humanity, disrespected, if they can survive that, to learn the language of French, because when they came here, they didn't speak it. When the Spanish took over, they learned Spanish. And when the English took Louisiana in 1803, they learned English. If they can do all of that, learn to grow their own crops and survive, I can tell this story and train people to tell this story. This story of us, we are the story of New Orleans. We're the story of Louisiana. And no matter what happens, our story must continue to be told. And so people like me, baby, the spirits are alive and working. I'm not the only one. Every time they try to wipe us out, wipe our story out, I'm not the only one. There's a group of other ones who are as dedicated as I am to tell the story. And so instead of staying home and making my T-shirts and making my shrines for people, I'm going to be out there. Miss Denise is going to be out there. I'm going to tell it with my last breath. Our success, the success. Do you know we Black women owned half the French Quarter at one time? How do you come here and owning nothing? And you see, that is the way we operate. If you open that door, you open it just a little bit, and we're gonna kick that puppy wide open. Hustle is our name. Hustle is our middle name. What's your first name? My name's Linda. Well, hustle is your second name. You got to have that job, that half, and that hustle, because it's in you. It's in your DNA. So,
and I'm not suggesting that we created the hustle, but indeed we perfected
it's in our DNA.
Took the hustle to a very different level in Congo Square, where we gave birth to sort of vending and mobile selling, just beyond your friends, your family, your neighbors, but going out into the community. And we think of, our ancestors, selling produce, selling cooked goods, but there was so much more involved in that. There was the transport of information.
That's right.
The transport of resources.
That's right.
There were the things that were hidden in that cart underneath the praline,
That's right.
underneath the watermelons, that
Those are our medicines.
yeah, that got moved from
Spiritual
one.
and medicinal. Spiritual medicine and medicinal. And they wanted to wipe out our vending, but they were dependent on it. They sure wasn't going to go grow no greens and grow sweet potatoes. They wasn't going to get out there and dirty their hands. They wanted to actually put an end to our vending in Congo Square, but then they would have starved. We fed this colony. And so spirit, once again, spirit is always active in your survival. Always. You may not be able to see it, but there's a whole play being worked out behind you in the spirit realm, taking care of you. So sometimes, my people, my children, you got to know that surrender is your greatest power. When you say, you know what, I cannot do this, and I surrender it to spirit, that's when spirit says, okay, I just needed you to give up. I just needed you to stop fighting. I let you run into that wall 15 times. Now let me work on it. Once you surrender, then spirit steps in.
Yeah.
Spirit will step in.
Yeah, and I teach that often it's your ancestors. The illusion, keyword is the illusion. The illusion of an issue of block of complication is what you don't know. And our ancestors and God and the spirits are on the other side. They have a greater degree of visibility forwards and backwards than we do. And so often your ancestors are creating the illusion of a block, an issue, a complication to get your hard head to stop, to get you to slow down, to get you to make a left when you're trying to make a right, to get you to make a detour. And in many cases, just to be still and quiet. You know, some of you have a visceral negative response to words like humility, to words like surrender, to words like passive. But we're talking about to the spirits, because it's often not your friends, your family that is blocking your way. It's what you think you know, what you think you understand, that overriding voice in your head that's over talking when knowledge is being given by the elder or by spirit. And so, you know, I don't get a negative response when I hear elders like Denise use words like surrender, because I understand what that is. It's human to understand the limitations of your humanness. That's right. But it's also divine to understand that there's no limitations within the realm of spirit. That's right. So we must surrender to allow spirit to speak, to allow spirit to work. And so in these traditions, when we're adhering to the moon cycle, every 4 days, we acknowledge those spirits that speak divination, that speak through your cards, through your bones, through your obiabata, through your kola nuts. Those spirits that speak through your Bible. You know, there's a form of divination, you know, where you sort of flip your Bible. Some of you are doing, you know, and wherever you land, you know, spirit speaks, you know, through those words. So we all act within a realm of divination in some form. Some of you are doing it through astrology, you know, doing it through the movement of the planets, you know, and they're all pieces of a pie, if you will, slices of a pie when brought together, gift us whole messages, whole ideas, whole ways of getting out of things that we, you know, in our flesh think we have no way out of. She and I both have manifest the impossible. More than once, you know, spirit I need, ancestors I need, and it comes through, and comes through in abundance. So we acknowledge those spirits that govern the crossroads, that open and close doors. That's right. You have to acknowledge Legba. You have to acknowledge Eshu, lest you trip up yourself, lest you slip up in a pile of dog mess of your own creation. You know, if we don't humble ourselves, if we don't find some serenity in accepting, because it's an empowerment act for me. And to surrender. that God and the ancestors are so much bigger than what I think I can come up with.
Well, them people, my old folks used to say, oh, you sneezed that truth out, didn't you? And let me tell you, if you wake up between 3 and 5 in the morning, please do not fight to go back to sleep. Between 3 and 5 in the morning, those spirits are going to speak the truth. Don't fight to go back. You woke up between 3 and 5 for a reason. The world is quiet where you are. So you have got to, this is the time, get up, go sit on your sofa and say, what is it? What is it that I need to know? And then go quiet, because spirit cannot speak if you run in your mouth. Just say, what is it that I need to know? And just sit there. And whatever you need to know is going to be taught to you. The other thing I want to say, you can't get out the house. You got to go make the groceries. You got to go run the errands. You can't find the keys. Something ain't right. Can't get out the house. Something is holding you up. You get in the car. Oh, I forgot my wallet. Get back out the car. Go get the wallet. When you are delayed and you start to feel that anxiety go up into you, honey, you are delayed for your own good. Spirit is holding you up away from that accident, that bad encounter. Something is delaying you for your own mental and spiritual health. Well, if you wake up at 3, you need to get out that bed and sit for a while. You can always go back to bed, but you need to find out what's going on. That's when I get my answers than that.
And Danette is one of my godchildren. She know better.
She know that.
You should have a journal right next to your bed.
That's right.
Right next to your bed, and not just a device, a journal, pen and paper.
That's right.
Paper. And write down. And if you can't remember in your physicalness, then write down what you feel.
Right.
When spirit wakes you up,
That's right.
In those magical twilight hours of the morning. Journal it.
Get out the house, it's for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I thank spirit when I can't get out the house. Oh, baby, I go, I don't know what you're keeping me from, but I am truly grateful. I am grateful. Now, when it's time for me to go, you'll let me find those keys. But I'm going to sit right here until you tell me it's time to leave out the house. And whatever I'm supposed to be doing can wait for me running into somebody or somebody running into me. So, oh yeah, every spirit is always at play. It is up to you to recognize it. You have a business, you need a business. Somebody says, I want to start a business. I don't know what to do. You don't know what to do? Sit down and let spirit tell you what to do. Spirit is constantly giving you information on what you should do, how you should do it. And I'm going to tell you something else. I was so hard-headed before I started Our Sacred Stories. I had a billionaire stand next to me, freezing cold, while I was working for somebody else, miserable. And a billionaire walked up to me and said, you know what? You're smart. I've listened to you. You can do your own tours. 2 days later, another boy who owned a company I'd have been in competition with and said, why haven't you started your company? And the third thing was, somebody said, bring me downtown to get my license to start my business. I just sat down and went, I hear you, spirit. I'm going do what you keep asking me to do. Because if there's something you need to do, spirit is not going to let you stop. It's not going to leave you alone. If you ask for something, people, places, events, opportunity is all going to come to you. Oh, you want to do it? You told spirit you want to do it? Okay, be ready. That's all I'm going to tell you, because opportunity is going to knock on your door. Just be ready. You want to do it? Oh, but they got 100 other people doing it. So what? What that's got to do with God, what spirit has for you? So what? 100 people is doing this, that, or they're not going to do it like you. You better get up and didn't Pepsi get started and Coke was already in business? So what? There's always room. There is always room for you to get some of that money. Okay? Always. So don't care how many people's doing it. Sit back, do it your way. Spirit's going to teach you how to do what you need to do, and you're going to be celebrated. I want you to sit when you finish your day and think, I am getting calls from all over the world to do this. And that's how I got started. I'm getting calls from all over the world to do what I do. That's right. There's money enough. Don't they print money every day, all day? What makes you think they ain't got enough out there? What makes you think they ain't got enough for you? Babies, don't listen. I can go into the dollar store and spend $55. And come home and go, I don't need that many coffee filters. So come on, baby. Money is constantly in motion. Money is constantly in motion. And they got people who want to give it to you. Trust me, I know. Somebody want to give it to you. So please don't think nothing is limited. It's not limited. It's waiting for your twist on that t-shirt, or your twist on that fish plate, or your twist on hair care product. So what? Get out there and do what Spirit tells you to do, baby.
Ashe, and acknowledge Spirit in all things.
In all things.
Ancestors in all things. And they will indefinitely open the way and bring forth that which mirrors your best image.
That's right. That's right. Ain't nobody tell a story like me. Not only am I saying that, I'm not bragging. Ask people, does anybody tell a story like me? Because I am me and nobody else is me. And nobody feels how I feel about this culture. Nobody. So I tell stories like my ancestors told stories. We are the West African griots. We will tell you a story and then stop to tell you another story on how that story got storied. Okay. So, yeah, you are unique and divine and unlike anybody else. And when you make a gumbo, your gumbo is unlike anybody else's. And so everything about you that you put your hand on is unlike, and somebody's going to like the way you do it.
That's right. As a successful transplant, there was a time when, there was a time when I didn't expect to do anything beyond what I was doing in my own comfort zone. Like many under the sound of my voice, robbing Peter to pay Paul, trying to keep your bills paid, trying to keep the lights on, and didn't see a bigger vision for my life and how I could be growing of what I knew, really until Hurricane Katrina, what would otherwise be considered one of the worst things ever. But it was out of that environment, it was out of that experience, it was out of the magic in nature, in that moment in time space, that my eyes came open, and people such as Denise just suggested, said, well, why aren't you offering that? Why aren't you teaching that? Where's your YouTube channel? I didn't have a YouTube channel then. I didn't have, many of the social media sites that we interact in today. I'm talking back in the day of Yahoo 360 and MySpace and Black Planet, back in the early 2006, 7, 8, 9. And it was in the scope of that time that Spirit gave me a bigger vision than I could envision, a bigger dream that I could dream for myself. I know that sounds very Oprah-esque, but indeed that's what happened. And of course, quartz crystal has always been a part of my personal spiritual walk. And so in this new development, third eye being wide open, utilizing quartz crystal to refine and focus those vibrations and those energies and those visions and bring them back to me as real world reality. And it's at the root of why I do what I do. It's at the root of who I am today. So I acknowledge on any given day, but most certainly on those established ritual days,
Oops.
I most certainly acknowledge the spirits that speak to us, that operate for our best interest, that traveled with us through the Middle Passage and survived into the New World, like Ananasi and Legba and Ogu. And so I acknowledge those powers and have been for decades now. Still makes me uncomfortable to say that, makes me feel old. But for decades now, I've been acknowledging these powers and these spirits and fulfilling my destiny through the practice, through the magic, through the work, through the healing. And in the beginning, it seems almost like a conflict, to make this change, to do something different, to take a different path versus survive and to continue to survive in the condition that we find ourselves at any point, in our existence. It's a challenge for people who have good jobs, who want to be self-employed, know they should be self-employed. And there's a part of them that says it's not logical to give up, your degree and your years of seniority to try something new or something untested. But often those new and untested things are being spoken to us directly from God, directly from spirit, directly from ancestors. And indeed, if they give you the vision, then they're going to do the work necessary to help you to meet those goals. You just got to put one foot out there. You got to put both hands into the game. And you got to be willing to learn some new things at any age. At any age in
And
your
step out your comfort zone. Step out your comfort zone. Oh, you comfortable. I'm paying my bills and I got a little money on the side and I got a little money. Yeah. Step out of that. Baby, you can't grow. Listen, it is not comfortable for a crab to grow in the shell it's in. Why do you think it crawls out of it? Everything crawls out of that shell to just get a little bigger. So you're going to have to, whatever it is you're afraid of, you are divinely, absolutely, totally, and wonderfully protected, child. You got to know that and crawl out that shell that's already too tight for you so that you may grow. Oh, but they don't think you can do it, but I know you can because I did. Do you think for 1 minute, the first time I stood in front of 15 people to tell a tour that I was to talk about my history to a tour, I was comfortable? No, I was not comfortable. But baby, I walked in there and I said, I need every ancestor to lay their hands on my back and push me back out on that stage so that I can do what I have to do. And as I started talking and you see, storytelling is powerful. As I started talking, because we share humanity. My story may not be exactly your story, but something in my story is going to remind you of your story. And when I realized the power of storytelling, I understood the foundation in it. And then all I needed to know was the truth. So whatever you're afraid to get out there and do, baby, your shell is already too tight and you need to grow. You need to crawl out that shell so you can go where your ancestors expect you to go. Nothing is limited for you. They survived. The mere fact that you're here tells me you're a Superman. You're Superman. And that goes for white folks too. Because let me tell you, on the Titanic, poor white folks went down and rich ones got out. But them poor ones got. So this goes for whites and blacks. Not all the time did they come here on a beautiful yacht. They had a struggle too. It's just your whiteness makes it easier for you than it is for me. It makes you less determined. I'm just more determined because I know I've got to fight 5 times as hard. Now we're going to talk the truth. I am in no way ever going to deny the truth. So whites including, they didn't come here easy. I knew some hungry ones because my family used to feed them when the husband wasn't doing the right thing. So come on now, y'all. We taught her what to cook. But struggle meals, baby, we taught the neighborhood how to do a struggle meal, how to eat, how to go and pick wild greens. Okay, come on now. You're supposed to be doing something. Try it on the side. I'm not saying quit your job. I'm saying try it part-time. Make it your side hustle. And when your side hustle start making more money than your job, then you'll know where you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to do. Because your side hustle, you see, you take all that money home, you know. So I'm telling you, you got to take a chance. You got to take that chance. You got to do what you need to do. All right, Ty, I got 5 more minutes before I do what I need to do.
Well, you could give your contact information and reiterate that it will actually be me who will be taking the email request for the Tour Plus experience.
Right.
If people want to read the tour, our Sacred Stories. If they want a Tour Plus experience, then they have to contact me.
Right. If you want the rituals after the tour, then you're going to have to book through Ty. If you just want a Afro Creole tour of culture and traditions, then you'll book it through Our Sacred Stories. You can give me a call, or you can email me at oursacredstories@oursacredstories.com. Let me know how many people. We will then work out a time that's agreeable for both of us, because my people are grown, honey. My day is my day. So, you know, I'm very versatile when it comes to times. Now, if you want a Tour Plus experience where I drop you to the temple and then Ty does the voodoo part of it, then it is DivinePrince at houseofthedivineprince.com. It was good seeing y'all today, but like Prince told you guys, my day, I start running at 6 o'clock in the morning. I have a full schedule every day, and my day doesn't end till I'm usually in bed by 8 and sleeping. So it has been my pleasure to do it. I have no intention. There has been to green soap at this time. There has been a lawsuit filed against the Catholic Archdiocese of New Orleans. They may have been 2 or 3. At this time, I have not sought legal counsel on this matter. This is not something that I am totally against. It's not off the table, but not at this time. I have a series of projects I'm trying to get off the ground associated with Our Sacred Stories. And so my focus is I have goals, and my focus is meeting those goals. But I know I have a year from the time that they did it. So there is no hurry. There is no hurry. I tell you what I will not participate in, and that is I do not believe in class action suits. I won't be a member of a class action suit. I will never join one of those. If I do decide to sue the Catholic Church, it will be my company and individually. So thank you for your time, Ty. I will talk to you soon, okay? I'm off to run an errand and see some people. Thank you all. It's been my pleasure. oursacredstories.com, Our Sacred Stories at Our Sacred Stories. for my email, Our Sacred Stories at Our Sacred Stories. And, reach out to me and maybe I can help you plan your visit to New Orleans. If you want a tour plus experience, of course, it's DivinePrince at houseofthedivineprince.com. You meet me first and then you're dropped off for the Voodoo section of your experience. Thank you, Ty. It's been my pleasure. And to your audience, thank you for letting the little old lady have her say. Goodbye.
Thank you kindly. Enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Blessing.
Thank you.
I now want to share Becoming the Second Line, a documentary. Becoming the Second Line, a critical component to our maintaining traditional African traditions and culture here in beautiful Treme, but also in the city of New Orleans. Becoming the Second Line.
This is a documentary on jazz funerals, or at least it started out that way.
On May 12, 2013, we set out to learn more about this cultural parading tradition unique to New Orleans.
But as it goes with any good adventure, and motivated adventurers with open minds,
we learned and experienced more than we ever could have imagined.
This was our first film project, and we began planning weeks in advance for this exciting endeavor.
We had a plan we wanted to follow and interviews lined up for the week ahead of us.
We planned visits to the above-ground graveyards,
Tulane University,
the University of New Orleans,
and museums in an attempt to fit as much into 1 week as possible and to gather the most footage.
All right.
Hello, I'm John McCusker. We're in New Orleans. It's Mother's Day 2013. Clarinet sounds like a cat being swung around by the tail, huh? What does this mean by caterwauling? You been in the little gym yet? It's very nice in there. I don't know if they're going to make enough money to make it, though. They got too big a space, and I don't know if they're in a place that can get regular clientele on it, you know? Oh, wow. Somebody broke in here. In 1925, this is a band called the Red Onion Jazz Babies, but it's really Louis Armstrong, Sidney Bechet, Clarence Williams, and Alberta Hunter, and two other guys. And they're going to be doing Cakewalkin' Babies from Home. You're going to hear a little singing, and then you'll hear the real fireworks as Louis on cornet and Sidney on soprano saxophone go at each other. Jazz would exist without Louis Armstrong, but it wouldn't be what it is, what it became. American popular music wouldn't be what it became. He created the whole vocabulary for musicians around the world to follow. And he's the figure that's most connected with jazz. He's an icon, his image, which is pretty remarkable. I mean, this kid was born in a really kind of rough existence. He was born on Jane Alley at Perdido Street, about a mile up this way. I'd love to show it to you, but we tore it down and built a traffic court building on top of it. But he lived with his grandmother, Josephine, who owned the house. 5 years later, he's living with his mother in this area up here. I'd love to show you that house, but they tore it down and built City Hall on top of it. But he lives with his mother for many years, and he's kind of left to his devices here at Rampart Street. And he befriends the Karnofsky family. It's a Lithuanian Jewish family that ran a number of businesses, including a tailor shop, which they ran out of this location right here. And you can see they were the model tailors. Louis would ride in their delivery wagons, and he would eat with them afterwards. He loved eating kosher food, he said. If we go around back, we can see where the Karnofsky kitchen would have been. Now here's Sidney. And here's Louis. A growl at the end, it's sweet. Karnofsky's had 15 kids. After they ate each day, they had to get them all to sleep. And Louis said they would all sing together. And he, in his writings, credited this Jewish family with, quote, teaching me to sing from my heart. What's fascinating is he's singing in Yiddish. He has no idea what he's singing. And yet he says they taught him to sing from his heart. That gets Louis thinking, it's not the words, it's the feeling that you're imbuing into what you're performing. And what is it but that's at the heart of scat singing, which Louis basically invented. Singing without words. Like he does. And it's fascinating to think if that started over matzo balls in Miss Karnofsky's kitchen. To wheel it back a good bit, if you have to talk about a music that was most important in New Orleans And what New Orleans was most identified with before 1917, it would have been opera. Whether you were slave, free, black, white, all participated and took in opera in New Orleans. Well, that's one end of the equation. What's important about that, though, is that it institutionalizes European instrumentation, musicianship, pedagogy. You've got infrastructure, you've got music stores. People don't have to wait for the Civil War to be over, like there's going to be a cornet laying on that corner next week. No, you go to a music store and you buy instruments, and they had music stores here very early on. Now, the other thing that's going on that we know about as early as the 1780s is what's happening among the primarily African and Afro-Creole population here. There are accounts of them dancing, generally on the city outskirts, the levee, places like that, at the end of the day. This gets more institutionalized on Sundays because of the Code Noir. The Code Noir, the Black Code, was conducted by the French when they first established New Orleans, and then later by the Spanish. And what it said was that slaves had Sundays off. This was unique in the American experience. The English and the Americans didn't do things that way. So slaves could do pretty much as they wanted on Sunday. And they would gather at the city's markets. And when I say the city, I'm talking about roughly the area we call the French Quarter today. And it was surrounded by a number of markets. And Africans would gather on Sundays and drum and dance as they did in West Africa, even to the point of collecting according to their native tribal allegiances. The Twi would be over here, the Mandingo would be over here, the Wolof would be over here. So the Americans, when they took over in 1803, didn't feel they could just put this down, but they didn't feel they could let it go on either. So in 1808, they passed a law banning dancing at the city's markets, save for the one that was here. This was the Congo Square Market. And what they unwittingly did was create a sensation, because instead of having 50, 60, 70 Africans dancing at any one of the markets, you've got 500 Africans dancing here. And people who visit New Orleans start writing about Congo Square and how unique it is in the Americas and how people should come and see it. It almost becomes something of a tourist trap in a way. It was this wild thing that you wanted to go and do. And what's important there is you've got a culture not of the written word, but of oral tradition. Musicianship is handed directly down. Music isn't written down. It's up here. But more importantly than just the music, you've got the concept of public dance, of dancing in the open air with your community. Now, what develops at another one of the city squares, at the same time the Congo Square is going on, you've got West African drumming and dancing going on here, is at the Place d'Armes, which is now Jackson Square. As early as the 1780s, you've got military fife and drum corps marching there. By the 1830s, modern valve and brass instruments are invented, and brass bands become popular around the world, but particularly in New Orleans. There is a note in the New Orleans Picayune from 1838 noting a mania in New Orleans for horn and trumpet playing. So you've got this brass band martial traditions carrying on over at Jackson Square, and then you've got this African music making and public dance going on. Let's think about how those two worlds could come together and what would bring them together. See, these folks have got to be walking up to where the parade's going to start. 1705. So you're 1825? Okay. Yeah, it's going to be up at this bar up here, probably where they're starting. Yeah, there's the food trucks. You're in business.
My name is Bruce Rayburn, and I'm the Director of Special Collections and Curator of the Hogan Jazz Archive at Tulane. My training is in history, so I have a PhD in history as opposed to library degrees. I've also worked as a drummer in New Orleans for the past 43 years. So I sort of have a merging of the perspectives of a working musician with a trained scholar. Benevolent associations in the Black community in New Orleans, which in many cases evolved into social aid and pleasure clubs, are older than jazz. Pretty much every ethnic group in New Orleans had their own version of a benevolent association, the purpose of which was to provide social services for immigrant populations that were arriving and trying to find a place for themselves in the city of New Orleans. And so social services, the equivalent of health insurance, for example, access to medical facilities, and in the case of many benevolent associations, a funeral with a brass band were part of the package. You paid dues to have those services.
Benevolent societies were the ones that really brought the sort of martial funerary tradition to masses. What benevolent societies really were funeral insurance. You pay a certain amount of money in, and when you died, your funeral was paid for. That's important in New Orleans. We had the highest mortality rate of any American city. And you can't just stick somebody in a pine box in the ground here. You've got to put them in these above ground cities of the dead, and more expensive. And these societies got popular because of that benefit. They also served as sort of healthcare. You know, if you were sick, they would give you a voucher to go to a pharmacy or see a doctor.
Over the course of the 20th century, benevolent associations were replaced by insurance companies and better medical facilities being made available either by the state or through private means. And so the functions changed somewhat.
You would have Germans, you would have Portuguese, you would have French, you had free people of color, all had these benevolent societies. And they're what institutionalized the use of brass bands in marching funeral traditions. And what evolves with this tradition of marching with the brass band at the funerals is that the audience for these doesn't stand on the sidelines and watch the parade go by like at a Mardi Gras parade. You fall in and you participate and follow it along. That's called the second line in New Orleans.
Social aid and pleasure clubs today are really about the second lines that they run, their annual parades. And it's fellowship. So in other words, they are, this is how they display who they are to the community.
We have been enjoying our life like that. Just those on the other side of the fence didn't understand what we were doing. And then when they realized, oh, those black people are really having a good time. And I want to have some of that kind of fun too. So because it's always been an open affair, except segregation kept us apart. I'm Ronald W. Lewis. I'm the president of the original D9 Associated Press Club here in the Lower Ninth Ward. I'm a lifelong resident here in the city of New Orleans in the Lower Ninth Ward. I'm the director of the Housing and Spiritualist Museum here at the Lower Ninth Ward. I'm a member of the Northside Stone and Bone Gang. I'm a Prince Hall Mason. I'm a member of Hoodoo. I'm a New Orleans. And being social is just part of my life, of working with people.
So these are people who are involved in trying to improve communications and conditions within their own communities, but also to put on a public show, which is intended for the community. It's for themselves, but it's for the community. And of course, the second line is the community response to these parades. You know, you don't just witness the second line, you become a part of the second line. The way you do that is by dancing. And it doesn't make any difference if you're a good dancer or a bad dancer. It's like the spirit that you bring to bear.
It's the same sort of thinking as what you had with that African dance. That's why I said the African dance, I think, was more important, more so than the music on a certain level, because you had the idea of dancing in the open air with the community. Well, no longer dancing in a circle to bambulas like Africans, but following the European-style brass band down the street.
Second line, you know, you see something going on, people just start flocking there. I'm Joe Foley. I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana, born and raised. I work at Banana Courtyard, bed and breakfast. Been here for nine plus years.
When John McCusker dropped us off that day, he warned us that a shooting might occur. He suggested that we leave about an hour into the parade. I planned to follow his advice to get our footage, have our fun, and get out of there before anything bad happened. But while we were there, caught in the moment, filled with the energy of the street parade, everything seemed fine. I wanted to stay. I felt like part of an army, and it didn't seem like anyone else was leaving yet. I felt unstoppable. But now I know what it feels like to march in a battle unarmed, and it's frightening to think that one or two armed men can bring an entire army to its knees the way they did. I'm just grateful that no one died.
I just made 28 about 2 months ago. I have a son and my wife, she has a daughter. They're both 9. They was headed for Mother's Day. They came out of church and they was gonna head down there. I probably would have been with her, just because they were gone, to keep an eye on them, but I had to come to work. And, I'm happy they didn't make it out there. If it was up to me, it would never go. Second lines I can't do. I've been quit messing with the second lines about 2000, 2001, because I had a friend, really 2 friends, and got shot and died, for nothing. We were all together, but I wind it off and they wind up getting killed, which I could have been with them. Yeah, that was crazy. Me personally, I wish they would have never made guns. It would have stopped, a lot of deaths that wasn't supposed to be, that would have stopped a lot of deaths. But yeah, second lines, that's one thing I don't do. It's for a good cause, but me, I'm gonna say I'm scared. That's all.
Sunday, there were 19 victims, shooting victims, at a second line to celebrate Mother's Day. And you would think that that holiday of all holidays would be kind of sacrosanct. But the fact is, it's not the second line itself that attracts the violence. It's a reflection of the violence that's already in New Orleans and has been for a long time. What a second line does is provide the same thing Mardi Gras does, the same thing the Grambling Southern game does, which is large outdoor events with big crowds of people. And if you're trying to settle a score, having a big crowd to sort of blend back into after you've shot people is an escape route. It's also a spectacular way to publicize your act, very much like the bombings in Boston at the marathon. It's the same thing. When you have a lot of people out, a lot of media attention, if you want to be famous for an hour, you commit an act that, essentially terrorizing the community.
It can happen at any time with anybody. Mm-hmm. And I had someone to call me and ask me, well, what would make somebody do something like that? I say, what would make somebody take and set bombs off and blow up innocent people running in a marathon? No different. Mm-hmm. People who care nothing about life, do those sort of things. Yeah.
Today, the way the word terrorism is framed has to do with specific events and specific groups that are often seen as the perpetrators. The way I use the term is anyone who commits an act of violence, the express purpose of which is to create terror in the minds of the community, is a terrorist.
It's not about social class. Right. You had 26,000 people running in Boston. And why they all were running together? Because they had that common bond of running. This would connect them. And they come from a variance of social backgrounds. Right. You see what I'm saying? Right. But there were 26,000 people that had this common connection and were doing what they were doing that makes them happy and makes them feel good. And these two characters blew people to hell.
I don't know. The guns, really, they in the wrong people's hands. It's supposed to be no guns on the parade route, but the eyewitness, they was doing like a little follow-up report. They had about 29 people who got caught on parade routes with guns. Only 2 of them got convicted.
That's parade routes. So if you look at the parade routes and the statements that put on the bottom of it, it all of basically made the same statement.
Yeah, I've seen that before. Yeah. I've seen those statements.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you need a gun, at a parade for.
Yeah.
But You know, a lot of people know that they can go certain places without a gun. That's why I say I got a boring life. I don't do anything. Leave here, leave my job, I'm home. Might sit on the porch, go to the daiquiri shop or something, but I really don't go too many places.
Now, occasionally there's animosity between bands. And, you know, the Red Bull brass band blowout that they had in 2010, for example, TBC was a competitor in that. The Stooges ended up winning it. Soul Rebels were in there too. There were some hard feelings afterwards, and there have been running feuds that have led to like fist fights between different bands because it's a very competitive scene. You know, who gets hired makes a big difference. And social aid and pleasure clubs tend to have preferences that are driven by who's popular at the time or who is reputed to put on the best show. Stooges, for example, have been very popular because they really know how to work an audience. It's not their repertoire, it's their attitude towards entertainment that makes them particularly competitive. And so, you know, they've had issues with Rebirth, because Rebirth for a long time was used to being number one. And often it is number one. Prior to Hurricane Katrina, Hot 8 was sort of like the flavor of that year in 2005. So it varies, but these bands don't use guns to resolve their differences. And more often than not, even fistfights are rare. They usually find other ways to deal with it.
One of my mom's boyfriends, he was with the Rebirth Brass Band. And he was a saxophone player, so I used to, you know, go with him, practice and stuff, but I basically used to stay under him because I never really had a father. So, you know, I wanted to be under a man. So I used to go with him and see, but even when I was young, the same stuff been going on. It calmed down for a while, and now it's looked like it's getting, you know, worse. It's worse now. I went from project to project, uptown, downtown. I didn't seen a lot, heard a lot, and I don't know, like I said, that excites them. Whoever got the biggest clip, who gonna make the most noise and bigger bullets, that excites them. The guy that was 19 who did the shooting for Mother's Day, they said he just recently got out of jail for possession of drugs, illegal firearm, but he bonded out. He was still going to court. I'm going to traffic court for license suspended and a DWI charge. They trying to give me 30 days in jail. Down here in New Orleans, you can get a gun, you know, quicker than you could buy a book from the store. Serious.
I think usually they know what they want to accomplish, and frequently it is about a specific victim that they're using the crowd to settle a score. And there are many scores to settle, and the situation was exacerbated post-Katrina, particularly among high school students, because certain high schools were closed down. And so the kids that in those neighborhoods were part of that community were forced to go to high schools in other neighborhoods where they were seen to be invaders. And for example, the murder of Daenerys Shavers, the snare drummer with Hot 8, occurred precisely because his stepson was forced to go to another high school, tried to bond with a young girl in that high school. That was seen as transgression by her peers, and they were shooting at him and were not very good shots and killed Daenerys instead. That took away one of the top musicians in New Orleans. But it shows us, you know, that there are backstories to this violence.
They had a park for each ward, like the 7th ward, 8th ward, 3rd ward. Now, they don't even have parks. Some of them are coming up, but they don't have anything for the kids to do. So I ain't gonna say, you know, didn't start playing with guns, but that's what it is, lack of resources. That's what I blame it on.
Here you had hundreds of people out celebrating Mother's Day. We all had that common bond of the street parade. Come out there on that given Sunday, let the steam off and just enjoy the day. And what these characters did, they came there and just disrupted people's lives. Some people's lives will be affected the rest of their life.
Yeah.
But we will still go on with what we do culturally here in the city of North. It's hard for something that intertwines in people's life just to extract it out of their life. It's just not that simple. The culture itself have always been a form of therapy within the African American community. And so from the 1800s up till now, through slavery and floods and everything else, it's alive and well.
Yeah, oh yeah. It's like I said, I let the Hurricane Katrina have to come for me to, to lead the city. Like I said, I'm not gonna stop anything I do. Just be cautious now.
This Sunday, up on Jackson and St. Charles, the Divine Ladies had their parade for 1 o'clock. Following Sunday in the Trevia area, the Money Waster Club have their parade. After being in Boston, what they say? We're Boston strong. And we're New Orleans strong. And that's the spirit of these people here in the city. So,
Yeah.
And life goes on.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
When I first arrived here on May 6th, my first emotion was excitement. After just a couple days, a few layers began to peel off, and what I saw was sadness. A city being exploited for tourist pleasure. A city that was being used up, that was tired. But then I saw hope when Hood, my tattoo artist, said that things in New Orleans, specifically the tourism, were back to normal. Yet he still said that things were different. My thoughts were disrupted when I saw violence and experienced it firsthand. Everything and all my questions then hung in the balance, suspended, waiting for answers. Then came doubt when a woman on the street gave us a picture of doubt complete with decay and doom, of the transgressions of the past of her changed universe. I saw prejudice then, and remnants of the past complete with inequalities and segregation. I saw desperation in those who held signs asking for money, truly looking malnourished and not just in need of a beer. In the middle of fear and paranoia, I experienced care and concern from strangers. The man at the corner store who asked me if I was okay, and the baristas at Ambe who paid great compliments to my owl tattoo and showed me that the world wasn't out to get me after all. I saw care and concern in the faces of my peers and mentors, and those who didn't even know me when I talked of Sunday's events. I saw love as parents scream for their children in the midst of chaos, risking their lives in order to make sure their loved ones were okay. I saw the edge of death and how fragile a life can be as I watched a cyclist get hit by a car. I watched him groan as he was strapped into the gurney and was taken away by the ambulance, leaving behind a head-shaped dent in the windshield of the car that hit him, and plenty of blood across the pavement. I saw death as we followed a funeral with music, as inside the glass hearse there rested a dead body in a coffin. Yet, I saw joy on the faces of those who followed their deceased loved one. In the procession of death, I saw acceptance of death, which is really just the acceptance of life itself. There will always be those who hope and those who doubt. New Orleans will live on because of the ones who believe in her and believe that life goes on, and those who revel in resiliency are those whose spirits will live on forever.
I like to dance, probably out of my love for music, but I've always felt uncomfortable about dancing in public. And here we were, at a jazz funeral, in broad daylight, in a crowd, and at a funeral for someone I didn't know. And yet, it was time to dance. Time to pay my respect to the recently deceased. I wasn't the only one dancing, but I still felt a little out of place.
The term jazz funeral is a colloquialism used in New Orleans today for when a brass band escorts a body from the church or to the cemetery, historically playing sad songs on the way to the cemetery and happy songs on the way back.
A lot of musicians wouldn't even want to call it a jazz funeral. Tourist Commission likes to call it a jazz funeral because, that resonates with visitors. But a lot of musicians have actually interrogated that terminology and prefer to call it a funeral with music or a brass band funeral because you don't always play jazz. The traditional ritual requires that if you are accompanying the body either to internment or to where the hearse will depart from the entourage, you play dirges. It's a sign of respect. The brass band frequently would play spirituals in March time when they're on their way to go to the mortuary or a person's house or wherever they meet up with the body, and the body becomes part of the entourage. After the body's interred or taken away, what they call cutting loose the body, then it's appropriate to play jazz. So to characterize the whole thing as a jazz event is actually a little bit misleading, because there are different components.
The practice and even the musical selections predate the jazz era by at least 50 years. In an 1853 copy of the Times-Picayune, there's a page 2 editorial polemicizing against the use of brass bands at funerals. Why? Well, we were in the middle of a yellow fever epidemic. So if you're up dying of yellow fever in your Rampart Street apartment, the last thing you want to hear is a brass band going by playing a funeral dirge. But the interesting thing about the article is it describes how ubiquitous these are, says who has these funerals, which is militia units, fire companies, and benevolent associations, and that they play somber dirges on the way to the cemetery and gay and lightsome airs on the way back. So the whole psychology of what a New Orleans funeral was actually predates the jazz era. Jazz just glommed onto it later on. But that's where the beginnings of it are.
The kinds of music that they're playing at like jazz funerals now really
Totally different.
it's diverse.
It's not jazz. It's brass band music, but they're not influenced by ragtime and blues. They're influenced by hip hop and that sort of thing. Even the horn sections of like 70s bands like Earth, Wind and Fire, things like that, all that plays in. But it's an entirely different music. Just like the music that the brass bands played for the funerals in 1853 was different from what was played in 1910. You know, this is different. What's being played now is totally different. It's going to be like this. They play one chord. There are no changes. There's no progression.
Right.
Bum, 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 bum. And then the other horns are going to come and go, and they'll stay on one chord for 20 minutes.
In the 1990s, one of the things we saw was that many of the younger bands got involved in funerals where they just want to play hot all the time. And so they might do one dirge, or they might dispense with dirges entirely. In other words, they changed the ritual. And this is one of the interesting aspects of looking at brass bands in New Orleans, because it's really a very vital component in terms of the jazz environment here. We see lots of young musicians coming in and changing things. This becomes a point of contention, because the more conservative, older musicians often react negatively to that, say, no, this is a tradition, it's meant to be respected. But exactly where that interface of innovation and tradition occurs in New Orleans changes from one generation to the next. And there's got to be innovation. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about a continuum of jazz development that covers over a century now.
It was the day before our departure, and throughout the week, we had been searching the city for a jazz funeral.
At the last moment, we found one, and we were able to experience what we came looking for all along. We thought it was what we were looking for anyway.
In our pre-trip planning, the jazz funeral was our main focus, but after the shooting on Mother's Day, our research had evolved. Throughout our time in New Orleans, we bridged the gap from observers to participants in a culture that was so new and fascinating to us.
And despite how much we have learned about New Orleans, we've only just scratched the surface. We came looking for a jazz funeral, but we found so much more.
We got all the families from the Tremere neighborhood in the house. How about a hand for the Tremere neighborhood for keeping the music alive in New Orleans? We gonna try that again. How about a hand for the Tremere neighborhood for keeping the music alive? E flat down, down in the trim bass, and my big swing will all crazy. I want to see everybody second line. Here we go. Down in the trim bass, and my big swing will all crazy. What's down in the trim bass? Watching people's eyes shake, dance my step, by my house and front of my door. I figured right now it'll be better to get out of calendar now. Front of my door, yeah. Everybody sing it. Down in the trenches, and my baby sing it. Up, Jim, come on, y'all, one more time, let me hear you. Down in the trenches, and my baby sings it, all going crazy. Say, oh yeah, oh yeah. Y'all be sure to see Harry play. Roll your cap. Roll your cap. Where the brass band at? Is the brass band ready? We're all going crazy. One down in the tree, man. Can we get everybody on the dance floor? Come on, y'all. Let's fill it up right here. We want everybody. Everybody move it up a little bit, y'all. Come on. Down in the tree, man. And my big thing. We're all going crazy. Say, oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Who that? Who that? Who that? Who that? Who that? Well, the church bells are ringing, and the choir is singing. When the preacher moans, when I let the tone and the trimming all night long. Hey, sound and trimming, y'all, yeah. I want to hear everybody sing it. Break it down, y'all. Down in the trimming. Come on, y'all can do better than that. Say what? Sing it louder. We gonna try that one more time. Sing it louder, sing it with your Wu Tang. Come on, y'all. Sing it for Miss Doris Kendrick. Down in the trenches, me and my baby. Everybody put your hands up and sing along. Put your hands up. Come on. Come on. I want to see everybody shaking something. Down into me, y'all.